Hello and welcome to Sly REcords podcast, a Christian conversation about pop news and video games. And today I'm just going to give you 3 news stories. Right now we have, in society, we probably have lots more news stories that are developing over time. And I personally believe we are pushing those stories faster than the facts come out. So I want to take what's going on and then somewhat slow it down, per se. We'll take these stories in steps. So first, right now in the world, a lot of things are being bought up and joined within one companies. Lots of different purchases going on. One of those purchases was the purchase of Twitter by Mr. Elon Musk. Say what have you about it, but I think there are some interesting things being said about it, but a lot of things being focused upon that are not really what we may actually want to focus on. But let's just listen for a quick bit.
To explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election. Elon Musk says this is all to help people because he is just a free speech, philosophically clear, open-minded helper.
Off the platform like Trump was, we can all see that. But what we don't know, what we don't have access to, are all the subtle rules, the way that the algorithm works about who gets upvoted, who gets downranked. You take Google search results, we know that they are engaging. It's not just the algorithm that basically ranks all the search results. They engage in human interventions. We have no idea what those rules are. We have no idea what they're doing. They're putting their thumb on the scale of American democracy by upranking content that they like and downranking content they don't like. Given their power as a monopoly, we need to know what they're doing. What Elon is doing here with Twitter is he said, I'm going to open source the algorithm. I'm going to let people see what is happening. So if content gets taken down, we'll get to see, was that because of the algorithm? Was that because of human intervention? He's providing transparency, and transparency means accountability. We have no transparency into the decisions of big tech today. When they take decisions of enormous consequence to our democracy, we have the right to know that. And again, Elon's not doing it for all big tech companies, but by starting with Twitter, he's creating an example that hopefully we can now extend to the rest of these big tech companies.
Basically we have two sides of the same coin about algorithms, numbers, counts, things being up, down, dials being turned, all this nonsense of someone's going to go in there and change something that allow certain content to be now more accessible than other content. So there's this idea that big tech companies are, and whoever's in charge are able to do that. That they are able to shift the norm of a conversation, shift the ideas that are being populated. In a way that there's truth in this, that there is concern for this, but there's hope in the sense that maybe someone will get it right. In both, so if the first video clip was, let's call it a liberal concern of someone coming in and buying Twitter, and then the other clip was, may say, a conservative hopeful point that the opposite will happen. That right now, all companies are doing this. They all are dialing, have different search results and different things that us as users are getting into. But let's say for a second that the Elon Musk does come in and changes those things, and then there is a different platform that is showing, let's say, not necessarily the right point of view, but a view that is not being directed by other companies. Let's say that could be hope for it. But why put your eggs in those baskets and hope for this or not hope for this? Be concerned about that this one company is doing it. And the reality of the situation is that Twitter is just one company, and it just has those users, and it has some integration with those users. And it's a platform for this communication. It is for this communication of what would be more of what we would call Web 2.0, where there's content being put up and then us consuming it, but then us interacting with that content and going back to that said user. That is what I would say would be a wonderful thing in that you can have that engagement. But at the end of the day, it is just a tool. It is just for us to use it and us to choose how to use it. There is no hero coming in to save us from using this tool. It is our decision. It is our decision to engage with it. And it's decisions of groups of people to push a narrative. That's what if you want to do. The reality is that there's groups of people who think that they know what content should be out there and they want to put guardrails on it and not have it accessible from other people, or that it's wrong for us to seek out that information and then consume it because it is misinformation or it is not the information they want us to know. But we have our own responsibility. We can't have people going out there and saying, I know what's good for you and you do not. That's not how we are designed to be. That is not how we want to be. We shouldn't want someone, a leader, say, if we can go back in time, a king, to put, they know everything and then thus we will follow line and do those such things or understand from that point of thinking. We are not built for that. Our country per se is built upon taking in different ideas, talking about those ideas and discussing those ideas. And there's no one who's going to save us from the people who are trying not for us to engage in that, and there's no one who is rightly going to limit our point of view. It is up to us. It's not up to individuals. It's up to us as individuals to do such. But the problem, though, from this purchase or per se other facts of, we want to say, misinformation, is that our federal government has now put up a misinformation board. I don't know. I don't know if you've heard this or not. If you've had your ears perk up when I said that, I'll say it again, that our federal government has put up a misinformation board. So this idea that we should be shocked is an understatement. If you are shocked by someone coming in, say a single individual coming in and buying Twitter and then or buying a newspaper and going down this path of meritocracy where the experts or these few higher, not so I want to say higher individuals, but these people who have more talents than some people say, coming in and purchasing something, and if you're horrified by that, then I think you should be extremely horrified, extremely concerned, and ask us of government going down the path of understanding what information should be consumed as from the public's point of view in this realm of what we now are just debating about free speech. This putting in perspective of a one party doing this and putting guidelines for us to view as. So the Democratic Party with President Biden putting up this board, and then with the Conservative Party being concerned about that because of this one party did it. It will never be concerned on the sense of it's a party issue. It is an issue from a fundamental, not rights perspective, but a fundamental of understanding how your government is now going to communicate with you. That this is only good if you're a autocratic dictatorship government, because as that, you are the top, you decide what is truth, you decide what is correct information, you decide that these ideas are the correct ones and not other ones. For a not democratic, but for a democracy republic government from any point of time or point of view says, we now will put up an idea of this board of what is misinformation, that is a path to dictatorship more than anything else that has happened probably within the past 20 years. And don't want to say it's an overstatement, but that is the road that we are now on. That if the government says this is false, they will also declare what is true. There is no saying one thing and stepping away from another. It is it is both. It comes hand in hand. It's not that you can choose what is not true and then say, oh, I won't say what is true then. You are declaring truth at that point. And from that perspective, you are no longer letting the people decide how to live their lives, how to understand literature, how to interact with other people. It is now the government declaring what is truth and how you should live. There is no returning from this point unless you completely understand that and then completely tear down this aspect of government and leave all functions to where it was. This is propaganda. This is Stalin wiping away pictures of Lenin in photographs or wiping away other opposing factors of what actually did happen. It is the Soviet Union writing their own viewpoint of history. It is whatever dictatorship that you want to say and how they write their own reality. It is now going down the path of what the United States of America will do. You can shake in your boots about someone buying Twitter, but the reality is that if we go down this path, this is worse than anything that Elon Musk could ever do with Twitter. So moving on to our next story topic. You might have seen an image like this recently. Excuse me while I adjust this image. And for you might be just listening, that Netflix's stock has continually to dip or have taken a nosedive recently. And the aspect of what I care about messaging, I care about storytelling. That is by far the biggest thing from any political point of view. And this is the most political that this video series or the channel ever usually will get, would be on messaging. And if any factor is declaring messaging in my world viewpoint perspective incorrectly. So reality is now catching up with Netflix. their stock is finally dipping to where it probably should be to begin with. And what I mean by that is that for a long time, Netflix has already been down this road. This content producer of breaking the mold of how we consume entertainment, how we consume storytelling, how we consume sitting down and watching TV or film. And what is probably happening right now, my dad's probably continually watching Netflix right now. They break the mold. They were the first, not the first, but they were the first successful streaming internet company to produce this content. And so, as the first, they declared where this industry was going, how fast it's moving, and how they're going to interact with competitors. And so their stock and their and an idea of how they were as a company would be this is the standard. The problem though is that they built their company on a house of cards in the sense of they were never really fully able to achieve true success with their intellectual properties. They bought all of their success from other companies and their content, their shows, their offices, their Parks and Rec, their Friends, their movies, their other comedy specials, adult programming, kids cartoons, whatever it is. A majority of their library was built on the backs of other creators. So they've tried their best with, producing other content. And then the narrative that you might find is that the content that they decided to produce wasn't the right ones. Like if it was like, say, Dave Shapiro show, I believe was what that one comedian was, that they focused on producing content from other poorly developed or underperformed shows, that they picked up pilots no one else would, so they just put content out there that they could get their hands on. But the truth is they were never able to get their hands and foster creative talents that would build a library that they can fall upon when the IP holders would come calling. So one article that was done by Variety that I really like is that they call it as the mythology of Netflix being being teared down, that you no longer have to think of entertainment as Netflix. You don't have to think of entertainment from a standpoint of staying in your house and consuming Netflix. That's being broken apart. I think this article is going down the right path in a sense of this. We'll just use mythology again. The small mythology of Netflix is being exposed. I would say that it's just more simpler than that. The veil of Netflix's success is being lifted out, and we're being exposed to just the reality of what Netflix is. It is no longer, I would never call that Netflix was untouchable. It's just we were never seeing Netflix for truly who that company was. It's not saying anything bad in a sense of what they stand for. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual content that we can cherish and that we can consume and that we can build other stories upon was never there for Netflix. That the only thing that they really have would be like a Stranger Things TV series wise, that they never really embrace content that they can continually go out and produce and cherish upon. That a lot of Netflix's original program only lasts for 3 seasons. That they pick up these ideas and then they don't bear fruit in how we really want them to do. So that is Netflix. Next story that we're going to talk about is that, and this is a lot closer to content that I will continually talk about on the show, and that I really do care about in the sense that this is a positive thing that's going to be happening, at least from my perspective, that the Embracer Group has purchased this two and a half or three studios from Square Enix. These studios are Eidos Montreal and I think the other one's just called Square Enix Montreal, or in that regard. Anywho, this purchase, a lot of people are making maybe more of what it is than, or missing the actual truth of what Embracer Group bought, and not necessarily what Square Enix sold. There's this narrative that Square Enix sold these studios at a ridiculously low price, that they are making room for, that they're making room for Square Enix being sold to a different company, that this is a Square Enix problem. Square Enix did not fully get to succeed with a Western studio development. And I would say that the last point is for surely probably the more truth. But what I really would want to say would be that the Embracer Group is continuing to embrace more and more studios. Hence why they're called Embracer Group. At the cost of $300 million from cash, the Swedish company Embracer Group has purchased these studios that they have now purchased, and this price also includes the IP of those studios. But that includes the IP of like Tomb Raider, a bunch of other smaller, well-known franchises. I'm blanking on the other one. But those franchises now, instead of being in the clutches of a Japanese developer who is probably more tantalized by making more fantasy games, or thought the idea of having the Marvel rights to make those Marvel games is better than building off of established historic franchises, is now able to chart their own path, and now these studios with Embracer Group can maybe finally realize their actual potential, that they are now set up with their own devices, they can chart their own path. Most people would say that these studios are now on their own to make more of, say, a Tomb Raider. Probably that is true. We already have the announcement that there is another Tomb Raider game being developed. But more likely that these studios are able to chase their own goals now, that they are able to maybe make their own IP, or that they're able to tap into other Embracer Group's talents or ideas. And there's also this idea that buying these three studios, that this is a continued development of people just buying stuff up and consolidating into one companies, that they will have fewer companies being, and then we'll just have big top players. But I want to go to this quote that Phil Rogers of Square Enix America said. Embracer is the best kept secret in gaming, a massive decentralized collection of entrepreneurs whom are thrilled to become part of today. It is the perfect fit for our ambitions, making high quality games with great people and to grow our existing franchises. So he specifically, the person, well, this is coming from the viewpoint of someone who's being bought, but he not purposely, maybe purposely said this, but he said decentralization of collective entrepreneurs. That is not the narrative that people are going with. The narrative that all of these companies are being purchased to be consolidated and then to be shipped off, and they will all now have one name on the box, and that we all have one account from these 3 companies, and that's how it's going to be. That those are just our choices. But that is not going to be the reality. Reality of that, if that is come to fruition, that there will be smaller groups coming in to fill that void. And Embracer Group is not even coming close to that idea of that conciliation. I mean, people can say whatever they want, but that is what the Embracer Group's doing. It's not a centralized top-down approach where the head guy at the top, he says yes or no to everyone underneath them. That model example of how companies are run is what the HBO team or the TNT team or the Warner Brothers company went into. That instead of having Cartoon Network and having other sub companies underneath them be spread out and have their own way of their culture, of their businesses, that when HBO Max came out, everybody was centralized into one vertical path with one guy on the top. That is not what's happening with Embracer Group. Embracer Group is a holding company that's holding all these metaphorically and probably literally holding all these companies together, with each of these companies interacting on their own independently so that they can market to their own consumer base how they want to. If you take that away, there's no real reason to buy the company. Because if you buy a company and they're doing great, or that you believe in what they're going for, and you're saying, well, we believe this stuff, but we're going to take your leadership away, and then you're just going to say yes or no to me, then you're just buying them for potential into just the integration of your company, not because of the positive benefits that they were doing to begin with. So Embracer Group is going out buying companies to have them continually to do what they're good at, to continue to make video games that specifically tell the stories that their creative people want to tell. And it's not a centralization of these companies, it's a opportunity for them to realize what they can do. That's going to do it for today's episode. I would love to talk more and more and more about stuff that I do and do not know, but I only have so many words in a day. Thank you for listening, and see you guys later.